Welcome, everybody, to another GoDaddy Pro meetup. My name is Marcus Burnett, and I'm on the GoDaddy Pro team. Today, I have a couple of special guests that will be talking about the pre-client journey with you. But before I introduce them, I want to let you know that I will be monitoring the chat. If you're joining us here live, we'll have some time to answer questions at the end. So I'll be monitoring the chat and grabbing some of the questions out of there, and then we can answer some of those at the end. Also, we are recording this, and a replay link will be sent out at the email address that you used to register. I'll do that as soon as the video is available online, and that way you'll have that in case you need to drop out early, or if you want to share this with your team later. That'll be up on the GoDaddy Pro YouTube channel, and I'll send out a link at the same email address that you registered with. So without any further delay, welcome Sam Munoz and Karyn Paige from Sam Munoz Consulting. How are you both doing today?
Awesome. Excited.
Yeah,
Same.
Super excited to have you here. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get out of the way. But again, like I said, I'll be floating around in the chat and hanging out in the background. And toward the end, I'll come back in to help facilitate with some Q&A and all of that. But otherwise, I'll let you to it. Take it away, Sam and Karyn.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having us and for watching for those questions and everything. Definitely going to be helpful. I'm Sam. That is Karyn. Karyn, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Karyn.
So we're going to be talking about what we call the pre-client journey. I'm going to share my screen, and I also invite you, when I share my screen, to go to this link here and grab a copy of the workbook that we put together for this. I'm going to share this. Can we see the slides? Can we see a gradient? Okay, cool. So if you go to makingwebsitemagic.com/GDP-workbook, that will allow you to make a copy of the Google Doc workbook that we put together for streamlining your pre-client journey. And before we get into that, I just want to give you all a second to do that. And like I said, just a quick introduction. So I'm Sam. Like Karyn said, she's Karyn. We host a podcast called the Making Website Magic podcast. We really love the business side of web design and development, and such a huge component of that is the pre-client journey. And our goal here is to teach you about this concept so that you can do something. We like to keep things a little bit vague and broad so that you can fill in the blank. We put here to book more clients, but maybe you desire to book clients more efficiently, more successfully. Maybe you want to book clients at a higher price point. So kind of fill in, choose your own adventure there, but we're going to teach you how streamlining the pre-client journey will actually allow you to unlock those things. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on the presentation here. Karyn and I are going to be passing the microphone back and forth, so to speak, as we go. Marcus is going to be handling questions, so that's awesome. And hopefully you all had a chance to grab that workbook real quick, but that's the link. So we all good? We all set? Karyn, I'm looking at you over here because I did end up connecting my other screen. So, all right. Before we even get into this presentation, I just wanted to set the stage here because something that Karyn and I are very passionate about is not telling people what to do, not saying these are the steps you have to follow to achieve X. Instead, we like to present a framework that empowers you to make your own decisions in your business. So basically what we're doing today is we're providing you some guidance and some ideas and some potential destinations, right? But it's up to you to decide how to implement them in your business because you are the arbiter of your own future and you are in charge of your own business. So what we're doing today is presenting a framework so that you can feel empowered to make your own aligned decisions. We've got 3 main learning objectives for today. We want you to walk away understanding what the pre-client journey is and why it matters. That's where we're going to start. Then we want to teach you the key components of a streamlined pre-client journey. Again, a framework to approach the pre-client journey. And then we want to help you start to make some key decisions to design or refine your own pre-client journey so that you can go forth and receive all of the benefits of having a streamlined pre-client journey. So those are the 3 main things that we're going to be talking about. Before we even get into that, I really love this idea of applying a concept in the entire pie, if you will. So the pre-client journey is but one piece of the magical client experience, right? It's this very starting component. And if you think about it, a lot of us spend a lot of time when it comes to like our process and the client experience, we spend a lot of time in these other three stages, because those are the parts where we're very much involved. We're very much in our zone of genius, doing the web design, doing the development. We onboard our clients. We do the project in progress. That's like everyone's favorite part, right? Because that's where we're doing the work, and then we offboard the client. But I really, really, really want to advocate for the fact that the pre-client journey, before someone even becomes a client, is a part of the client experience that you're creating for them. So that's why it's shown here as a part of the map, because it's not this separate entity. It's basically the beginning point of working with you. So that's how it fits into the overarching picture. So let's define the pre-client journey, since I've said it maybe probably 50 times at this point. Let's define what it is. So the pre-client journey in its basic form is the path that a prospective client takes from first discovering you, first figuring out that you exist, to booking your services as a paying client. And so that could be, we've created these little icons here to show you that it's kind of like that first initial handshake. Maybe it's virtual, maybe it's you're handing them your business card, maybe you are, saying something on social media, they're finding out that you exist, they're landing on your website because they search something on Google, whatever the way that they discover you, to then booking you and paying you money as a paying client. So that's the pre-client journey. And as you can see, this visual is very specific, right? Because it is a single little arrow. It's streamlined. It's right from discovery to booking. But oftentimes we tend to have something that's a little bit more chaotic, right? We have our arrows pointing all over the place. Sometimes they loop back around. Instead of being very streamlined from discovery to booking, we overcomplicate things, which has a lot of negative effects in terms of actually allowing us to book those clients. So that's the pre-client journey in summation, essentially. So let's talk about why it matters. The very first thing, and this relates to that visual I gave before about the magical client experience, is that it sets the stage for the entire client experience, right? So if your pre-client journey, if the process of discovering you to actually booking you is chaotic and messy, complicated, that's kind of setting the stage that the client experience when they actually start paying you might be messy, complicated, confusing. If you're sending them a million emails to book their call, oh my gosh, am I going to receive a million emails when we start the project? So it's really, you can either set it in a very positive way or in a more negative way. So it really matters how we set the stage for the rest of the client experience. Also, and this one, it feels a little bit more obvious, a more streamlined pre-client journey increases the likelihood of making the sale, because you're making it simple, you're making it effortless, you're really lowering the barrier to entry someone has to go through in order to say yes and pay you. And then finally, having an established pre-client journey creates an internal process for you, the business owner, to navigate a prospective client. So okay, the first thing we're going to do is get on a call, then I'm going to send them the proposal, then if they say yes, they're going to get this, and then they're going to move into like the onboarding stage. So it's creating internal processes to make it really simple and easy for you to navigate them, including the follow-up, right? So if they don't respond to your proposal, you're also following up with them. So you're creating a whole process for yourself so that you can just like follow A, B, C, D all the way through, and it's not complicated for you. And it makes, honestly, it makes you appear professional and feel professional, which ultimately helps boost your confidence and will help make the sale, because you know exactly what's going to happen. When you're on the discovery call and they're like, hey, so what happens next? You're like, this is what's going to happen. This is how the project can be booked. Boom, boom, boom. Helps make the sale, increases your confidence, and really helps you create those internal processes. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Karyn to talk about the core components of the pre-client journey now that we've discussed what it is and why it matters.
Hey, everybody. Okay, so the core components of the pre-client journey are very simple and very minimal, right? It's going to start with your availability, designer and developer. Then it's going to take into consideration how to deliver your proposals, right? So streamlining this part of the process is also going to streamline your pre-client journey overall. And then consider your timelines and next steps. This is another component. And lastly, key and also like very secret sauce component is So let's dig a little bit deeper into each of these 4 components. Okay, so first we've got your availability. In other words, when is a client available? Now, this is very important for you to take into consideration because streamlining this process, it's going to reduce the amount of thought energy that's put in every single time you have a pre-client journey, every single time you have a prospect. So when it comes to determining your availability, there are some considerations to make. And first and foremost, it's got to start with these 2 questions. How many clients do you want to work with annually? And how much money do you want to make annually? This is very critical for you to get clear on as soon as you can, because this is what's going to allow you to develop your availability calendar and be able to determine with complete certainty and confidence when someone can book a spot with you, right? So if you're someone who really prioritizes how much volume you are working on in projects in a year, prioritize how many clients you want to work with. Right? Or if you have a very specific financial goal that you want to hit annually, you can kind of reverse engineer and say, if I want to make $50,000 in a year, or I want to make $5,000 in a month, and my package pricing is X, then that means that I have to work with X amount of clients in a month. So they very much go hand in hand, right? And once you have decided that for yourself and you're very clear on that, then you can get a little bit more nuanced and ask yourself questions like, is there any space in your project management process where you can have 2 clients a month? Or again, is it really only like I have space for one and then I move on to the next, right? So all of these things really inform what your pre-client journey will end up looking like. And then this is most important for me personally, because at SMC, we are all about aligning your business with your life and not the other way around. Do you have blackout dates? Add those into your availability calendar. Are you someone who has, specific time of the year where you want to go on vacation? Or you have kids who have their own schedule, and so it's important for you to align your schedule with your family, right? So build all of that into your availability, and then you can feel more. And you have somebody who's interested in booking you, you know exactly when you can fit them into your calendar. So the next component of the pre-client journey is really streamlining your proposal delivery. And in essence, this means lowering the barrier to entry for someone to look over that proposal, sign the contract, and pay you that invoice, right? So we are all web designers and developers, and we understand user experience, right? Which means we understand if there's more clicks to get to that final action, someone's probably going to bounce off the site, right? The same concept applies to the user experience of our sales journey, right? Our sales experience. Reduce the amount of clicks, right? So you can make to really streamline your proposal process, which is one of the first components to getting someone to, say yes and book you, is how soon will you send your proposal? What does that look like in your process? Is it a week out? Is it 24 hours after you have an initial discovery call? How do you want to deliver your proposal? Is it coming in, a one all-in-one solution, or are you sending it through many emails, right? So again, look at what you have and see if there's anywhere where you can refine your process and streamline it even more, right? And the reason why I say, how do you want to send your proposal? If you're currently doing something where perhaps you are sending a proposal in an email via PDF, right? And then separately, you're sending a document to be signed, like your contract via HelloSign. And then you're sending your invoice separately as a PayPal email, right? Like that's, in essence, too many clicks, right? Too many opportunities for something to get lost, for something to be confused. Again, we talked about really streamlining that process to give your experience. That's not as magical as it could be if it were streamlined with clicks, right? Can those 3 different emails be one, right? So streamlining that proposal process. And there's another decision to make here, which I personally think it's very over to providing a more elevated experience for your clients, which in turn will attract people who are more willing to pay a higher ticket for what you have to offer, is do you want to record a proposal video? This is a thing that you can do if you're not currently doing it. If you're sending a proposal, create a video that walks that client through each and every page of that proposal as if you were there with them talking to them one-on-one, right? So not only does this streamline the pre-client journey, what it's doing is it's answering any frequently asked questions before there is time to go back and forth in an email, right? You're a person on the other end of this proposal. So it's humanizing you. And then also, again, it's really a glimpse into what it's like to. And again, this is a very elevated experience that you're offering. You're not just saying, hey, there's a PDF, look it over on your own. It's like, no, there's also a video here where I'm walking you through, I'm letting you know, I'm speaking to you, it's custom, I've taken my time, right? So again, when you put all those components together, and this is just in the Streamline proposal delivery already, like, one, you've simplified it for your client and you've also simplified it for yourself. So just a quick little pro tip, if you're not already using template emails for proposal delivery, if you're not already using an all-in-one solution for your contractor proposals and your invoicing, definitely consider doing that. One, for yourself, to streamline it for yourself and your business, and two, to lower the barrier to entry for someone to book you.
Oh, I had to take a minute because like I love the Streamline proposal delivery. Yes. What's so great about the components of the pre-client journey is that what we're going to do here is we're kind of stacking them. So we started with availability, right? Something very internal, very much like, what do I want for my business? What is like my business design, all of the vision that you have for your own business. And then you move into how you're actually going to give it, streamline that process. And then this part, timelines and next steps, it creates urgency for making a buying decision. And we can't really do this part until we know the other information, until we know your availability, until we know how we're going to be sending proposals and all of that. So the third component really relies on the first two. But here are some timelines to consider. The first one is, when does your proposal expire? And I actually want to ask the chat, do you all expire your proposals? Go ahead and say like yes or no. The reason that expiring proposals can be a good idea is because sometimes people will come back 3 months, a year later and be like, hey, can we book this project now? And it's like, my timelines have changed. We're no longer available. We charge 3 times that amount now. So definitely, if you haven't considered expiring your proposals, definitely consider that. And in conjunction with that, how long are you allowing someone to look at a proposal? So we've got like a mix of some people saying no and some people saying yes. So something to consider in terms of a timeline. Another thing, and these relate to one another. When does the prospect need to make a decision? And this is important too, right? Because connected to your availability, if you only have 2 spots available, and they no longer, those spots are no longer available anymore once you sent out that project proposal, they have real urgency to make a decision. And that's why we included that word real, because it's not just like that fake kind of scarcity, like, oh, it's expiring in 24 hours. Like, no, we really are not available after 2 weeks to work on this project. Another timeline to consider that is also connected to the previous one is, when will the project begin? When will it be launched? Really creating a proposal and just information for your client to move them towards a buying decision so that they can decide, does this even work with me logistically, right? Does this align with like the launch that I have, all of the different factors that I have? Someone's writing my copy, I'm getting brand photos, all of those little pieces. And then this is an important one too, is when is the first payment due? So these are all connected to the proposal and to the overarching pre-client journey. I think it's really important too, before I move on to the follow-up, just to say that, again, they all build on one another. And the more we can honor things like our availability and honor the way that we send proposals and the next steps that we create, the easier it is to convey that to a prospective client to really help them move towards making a decision. And if we're thinking about someone making a decision, the follow-up, which we call the moneymaker over at SMC, is really key to the decision-making process. The reason we call it the moneymaker is because I would say at least 90% of the sales that we make happen after at least one follow-up interaction. So maybe that's an email, maybe that's booking an additional call, whatever it is, it requires an additional follow-up. So there's a few reasons why the follow-up works so well. And the first one is just from a human perspective, like, people get busy, right? Their kid is sick, their dog needs to be taken to a vet. They've got other things happening in their business. And so their website project isn't necessarily top of mind. So people get busy, and it's okay to follow up with them. The follow-up works too because it reminds someone to make a decision, and it allows you to get a clear yes or no. I love receiving a yes or a no. It's okay if it's a no, right? Because that can give you lots and lots of information. You can even ask that prospect like, hey, why did you say no? Did you, from a consent-based perspective, like, is there anything that I can improve in my process to, just work, sorry, my internet said that it was not working. Can you guys hear me still okay? Like totally derailed me. Okay, thank you. It allows you to get a clear yes or no, which I think is a very, very impactful. I like the idea of someone just making a decision and telling you, no, it's not going to work for me, so that we're not letting all these like little threads and strings hang. From another human perspective too, following up with people really positions you as someone who cares, right? And that's the kind of experience they're going to have when they're working with you in the project. You are someone that keeps them top of mind. It's important to you to work with them. You don't forget about things, right? You follow up and you remember that you sent out that proposal. And then I love this. Karyn mentioned this with regards to creating that proposal video. You can answer questions with the follow-up, right? You can say, hey, did you have any other questions as you were looking through the proposal? And honestly, the higher we are increasing our price points, the more likely you are going to receive questions about your work. It's not necessarily questioning, it is doing their due diligence to make sure that the price point that you're saying really aligns with what they need and all of the different questions that they ask. So you answering questions allows you to be the expert, to show up again as someone who is reliable and cares and deliberate, and it will help move them towards the buying decision or move them towards the decision at all. Because again, a no is not necessarily a bad thing. It's closure and it's finality for the pre-client journey. That's like a big component of the pre-client journey that's kind of a more hidden one, right? Is just like the closure, the finishing line. Whether it's a yes or no, it's the finishing of the process. And I know Karyn really wants to talk more from like a mindset perspective about following up. So I'm going to go ahead and let her share that.
Okay, so I just want to ask a question, put it out there, temperature check. How comfortable is everyone here with following up after you send a proposal? If you haven't gotten a response or you've gotten a no, feel free to drop that in the chat. Green would be all systems go. I'm totally comfortable following up with prospects. Yellow would be I know I'm supposed to do it, but I don't always do it and I don't feel totally comfortable. And red is like full stop, don't feel comfortable, never do it. I avoid it as often as I can. Okay, we've got some yellows, some greens, yellows. All right, cool. Yeah. I love seeing yellows because yellow means there's room to grow and improve. So I'm with that. Thank you so much for contributing in the chat. Thank you for your honesty. Really appreciate that. And speaking of which, I really want to hold space for anybody who does feel like they are a yellow or they are a red. And really honor that, because that's a legitimate place to be, right? Following up can bring up some anxieties, can bring up insecurities, especially if it's not something that you want to do. Maybe you feel like you're being pushy or being salesy. I definitely want to acknowledge that and then, move on to the next slide and address some of those hesitations straight on. So if you're someone who feels, like following up is something you don't want to do because you would feel pushy or annoying in doing that, following up is best practice when it comes to sales, right? Because as Sam mentioned previously, it allows you and your potential client closure, right? Also, as Sam mentioned, sometimes we need to follow up because the client gets distracted, gets busy, clicks the email and then it's no longer bold, forget that it's there, so sometimes it's not even about us. It's really about just reminding the prospect, hey, I'm here, didn't want to leave, don't like any loose ends in my business. So, just want to get a definitive answer here, right? if you're feeling like doing something like that would be pushy or annoying, I want to point out that that is not inherently part of the follow-up. That's a tactic. That's a communication style. It is totally possible to follow up with someone and have a style of communication that is based on consent, that is centering are, and that's really coming from a place of, I just want to have some closure, and or if it was a no, I just want to improve, right? So that's why following up really is important. It's consent based. It's asking permission. I haven't heard from you. Is it okay if I reach out? Or I'm going to send you this proposal, and if I don't hear back from you, is it okay if I keep reaching out until I get a yes or a no? That puts the ball in their court, and that lets them know that they are the one that is going to draw everything to a close in that process, right? And I want to center you as the business owner here and why following up is important for you. For example, if you did get a no on that project, I want you to feel empowered to ask permission from the prospect. Would you mind telling me why you said no? I just want to improve my process. I'm very curious for the next time I send out a proposal on ways that I can improve and refine, right? So let be an opportunity in a follow-up for you to get better, for you to improve your process so that the next time you do go through this pre-client journey, the likelihood of you converting is that much higher, right?
So taking all of these components, those 4 different components that we mentioned, availability, proposal delivery, timelines, following up, I want you to say in the chat, what feels good and where do you want to grow? And it's okay. Maybe you feel good in every area. Maybe most of them are grow areas, but I love this opportunity to say there are certain pieces that I am doing well. We love to talk about the things that we're doing well so that we can pull that confidence and that energy and all of the things that are working and moving into the growth area. So is there a place in the components of the pre-client journey where you're like, I definitely got this on lock. I know what I'm doing. And is there another component where you're like, this is actually the space that I can grow and will have a huge impact? Because again, all of these things stack together. The availability connects to the timelines. As Karyn just said, the availability connects to the follow-up, because if you're available for a certain amount of projects and you never get that answer and that closure, then you might just kind of leave it lingering. Has anybody ever done that before? I know I have. I've had it like penciled into my calendar that someone was potentially going to be a project. And then it kind of almost energetically closes me off to future work, or like in the back of my mind with the next prospect, I'm thinking, that person might say yes, so maybe I should move them there. So again, they all connect, and they all they really is growing them all together is the most beneficial. And what we're gonna have you do, after this, what we would recommend that you do after this class is basically take all of the answers that you've put into the workbook, all of the different things that we talked about today, all the decisions that you were making, and design your pre-client journey. Just address what are the good areas, where are the areas that you want to grow, and spend some time. If I was to prioritize these, definitely the streamlined proposal delivery is probably the highest income generating item here, unless you have loose ends that could be quickly followed up with. I say that because, as Karyn mentioned before, if you're sending out like 15 emails to book a project, it might be as simple as consolidating it into one all-in-one solution, sending out a single email with a proposal video, and then booking a project. So that would probably be like highest priority if you had to order them. But that's it. That's what we had for you today. I hope that you learned something, took something away from this, but we definitely want to leave space for lots of Q&A, because again, what we like to provide is a framework and give you space to ask questions as it pertains to your particular business.
Yeah, awesome job. There's tons of great info in there. I hope that people went ahead and grabbed the workbook at the beginning and were able to follow along some. I did that as well, and I'll make sure that I include that link in the email that we send out and in the description of the video replay and all of that, so people have that. I gathered a few questions from the Q&A, and I had some from beforehand, so maybe I'll just run through a few of these and see what you guys think. Starting kind of back at the beginning, what are a couple of tips that you might have for folks looking to get to that initial handshake, to the client discovering you part? So like the pre-client journey.
So one of the biggest things that Karyn and I talk about is tapping into your existing network. And what that might look like is, the people that your friends, if you have a specific niche of web design clients that you focus on, really spending time building one-on-one relationships. Maybe that's with other web designers, creating collaborations. Maybe it's with past clients. But if you want to increase your potential client pool, I really believe that relationships are key. There are other things you can do, right? Social media, advertising, but at the root of it all is relationship building, because that's what the experience is going to be like working with you. That's going to be the pre-client journey, is the ongoing relationship that they have with you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Skipping ahead a little bit to the first section there about availability. Do you have any particular tools that you use for scheduling clients based on the answers to the availability questions inside the workbook? Like once you've determined, whether you want them to overlap or not, and your blackout dates and all of that, do you have a calendar somewhere that you sort of start to pencil these in so that you can get maybe a visual representation of how you slot clients in and what you have room for and what you don't have room for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to answer that if that's okay, Karyn.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we do a mix, right? I'm more of like a tactical, physical person. So I love to whip out a physical calendar and start marking some things off and seeing, how many available blocks. The way that we run our business is very custom to each individual project. So some projects are 6 weeks, some projects are 12 weeks, but I like to see, how we can just visually on like a physical calendar. But then, and I'd be happy to share this too, however it makes sense, we created this public availability calendar for our prospective clients to look at. And it basically says like Q1, we have 2 available slots for this type of project. We have 6 available slots for this type of project. And that has been a game changer since last year, having a spreadsheet with actual slots so we can see, oh, we're booked for Q1 or Q2. And doing it quarterly has been what's been most helpful for us with, again, the way that we stack our projects.
Yeah. And this question also reminds me of, what we talked about at the beginning, where it's like, we can kind of give you ideas, but ultimately like you get to decide, right? So your availability is also going to depend on what services you offer, what your process is for each service, right? So for example, say you have your main signature service is a 5-page website with, design, development, mock-up phase, the whole thing, right? Revisions, just kind of that might take you 12 weeks. And there's like the content phase, the design phase, the development phase, right? 4 weeks per phase. So in essence, you can plug that into your own calendar, your own spreadsheet, whatever that looks like, color code it, do you, and then that gives you an idea of what your availability looks like. But ultimately, there's not a one size fits all answer, because we're all here with like our own businesses that we all run in different ways.
Yeah, I like that you have a like public facing like calendar, because I think that also creates that sense of urgency that you were talking about with the proposals too. Like, hey, you can see that our calendar is filling up, so you might want to get on that proposal and get us an answer. We're not making this up. This calendar is filling in, and you can see that for yourself.
I love using that expression too. Is like, this isn't a gimmick. This is just real life. Like, this is what's actually available. Yeah. Yes, I would definitely be happy to share that, Danielle. I don't know how, but
one way or another. Speaking of proposals, Danielle asked for proposal expirations. Do you recommend a particular length of time? And Hawa asked, is 30 days too long? Like, where do you, I guess, how do you determine for yourself how long your proposal should last? And then I guess more specifically to you all, how do you structure that, and what do you think is too long or too short for a proposal expiration?
Yeah. So The answer to this is really just an unfolding of more questions, which is okay. So because the answer is very dependent. It's going to depend on a couple things. When is the project supposed to start? If the project's going to start in 1 week, then a proposal expiration date that's longer than a week doesn't make sense, right? So that's something to take into consideration. The other thing is, I would say if you give people too much time, it does remove that urgency. And it does, you know, to Karyn's point earlier, it does take away from that ability for you to say the project is or is not moving forward. So I think 30 days can be a little long, in my opinion, for me personally, to just have it lingering. I prefer something around like the 2-week mark, because that does give them a chance to ask more questions. It gives them a chance to maybe talk to other people if they're wanting to. But what I like to do too in the follow-up emails is I'll say, you know, if you need more time, I'm happy to extend the expiration. You know, if we want to move the slot over, that's fine too. But really putting the ball in their court and letting them know there is availability constraints, essentially. So hopefully that kind of helps you answer that question for yourself, because it really, again, it really will depend on the length of your project, when the project's going to start, all of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess the follow-up to that is, what happens after a proposal expires? Do you start all over again? Do you kind of readjust certain steps of the process? Let's say it expired. Do you go, we have to start back at availability, let's figure out our availability again and work through the process over?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yes. If they're still interested in moving forward and the proposal has expired, then we just kind of move them into the next availability block. I would say, though, most of the time, people are either going to make a decision or not. Then, you know what I mean? Like, they'll communicate to you, like, I just need this to be at a different time. If it's not the right fit now, it's either a no forever or it's a no for now and will be done later, but they'll tell you that. I haven't really had too many situations where it is expired and then do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to tag on that too, because this is why we follow up on proposals, right? Like, there should not be there. I don't want to use the word should, right? You don't have to have radio silence from when you deliver the proposal till day 29 if your proposal expires in 30 days, right? This gives you the opportunity to follow up and say, hey, just a reminder, your proposal is getting ready to expire in 1 week. If you have any questions, if you need more time, please reach out to me. We can hop on a call if necessary, right? Totally legitimate reason to follow up and save a potential sale, right?
Oh man, that's so good, Karyn. And that reminds me of the fact that we will put this in our follow-ups. We'll just say, just give us an answer. If it's a no, we just want to hear that it's a no so we can stop bugging you, essentially. Like, it's okay if it's a no. We give them permission to tell us no, which I also think is really a kind, considerate thing to do, because people feel awkward about declining things. You know, that's like a common human experience, like feeling bad to reject someone. And so just giving them permission to tell you no gives you that closure. And one really, really important tip I'm just going to sprinkle in here is I love to personalize my follow-ups, because like there is no workflow that we do. We don't send people into a funnel or something. We write every single follow-up very personalized. Like, there's a section that's pre-written, but then the top of it, that's where I put the meat of the human side. I say, I know you've been busy because you work a full-time job, or I know that your kid was just sick. So how's everything going? And just like that little piece of humanity is also a part of that pre-client journey experience.
Yeah, that's often overlooked. It's so easy to fire off an impersonal templated email and just hope for the best, but that's not a great strategy. I mean, people are looking for people to build relationships with, not just, hands to do the dirty work.
Yeah. And again, it's like what we talked about earlier, like the pre-client journey really is a glimpse into what it's going to be like to work with you, right, throughout the duration of your project. So again, say your project takes 12 weeks and we're just sending out automated canned emails and I haven't even sent you an invoice yet. Is the whole design process going to be automated and canned? Am I just going to be like a custom field that you just drop in? Or am I going to have the space as a client to be like, hey, my kid is sick? That's why, it's taking me time to get back to you. So again, that is the kind of experience that you can give your clients, which one, motivates a buying decision, and two, totally justifies why your price point is the way it is if you want to go high ticket.
Can I just share one last resource? So I mentioned at the top that we have a podcast called Making Website Magic. Episode 30 is all about the follow-up. So I definitely, like, if you want to dive even deeper into the follow-up, listen to Making Website Magic episode 30. That one is like money because that's what the follow-up is. It is the money maker.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Gibbs asked in the chat, in regards to projects, any suggestions for making your team scalable to be able to take on larger projects? So I guess being able to take the question about availability and expanding your availability by scaling up your team. Any tips there or suggestions for how you can create more time, I guess?
Sure. That is such a great question. And I'm going to speak about this from like a very much we're in the weeds of this process ourselves. Karyn and I are like the core of our team, and we're starting to expand. And it has been a really fun and interesting experiment, essentially, of like, how can we, maybe before we could take on 2 projects, but now with an additional person, maybe we could take on 3 projects realistically. So I think it comes down to a very frank and honest conversation with like, okay, we have like team availability, like as a whole, but what is your individual capacity? And like what feels good and right for you? And just honestly, I love data. So just like adding up those numbers. And I will say that what will help you establish your availability, and Karyn alluded to this before, is knowing how long your projects take. So if you're not tracking your time already, I highly recommend doing that. Super easy. You can use a tool like Toggle. It's free. You just click the button. I love tracking how long things take. Maybe you think a project takes you like 2 weeks. It actually takes you 4 weeks with all the back and forth, the admin, the emails,
Always.
the feedback, oh yeah, exactly. And so take that and magnify that at least by 2 if you're expanding your team by 2, right? Because there's going to be all those other factors, the back and forth. So
yeah, okay. And I'm going to get super like mindset philosophical on this. What does scaling look like to you? Because scaling is different to everybody. Are you trying to scale from a team of 1 to a team of 10? Are you trying to scale from $30,000 gross revenue to 100,000? Like, that is incredibly important data to start with before we even give you tips on how do you scale, right? So, and then it's
true.
Like, okay, this is stuff that we talk about on the podcast all the time. Why do you want to scale? Is that something you feel like you should do? It's coming from external influence, or is it coming from like an internal place? Like, I've got to scale because I'm not making my ends meet every month, so we got to do something differently. Or do you want to scale because you want to be a celebrity mogul web designer and developer in the space, right? But so first
and the flip side is financial or number of clients, right?
Truly,
it's like, do you want to scale to make more money per client, or do you want to scale to have more clients? That's also part of that availability piece too that you mentioned.
Yeah. So we got to get clear on all of that first before we can give you tips on this is how you scale.
There's definitely a balance in that first availability section where you can't just be like, well, I want to make $5 million this year, but also it's just me and I want to take 4 months off. So like,
yes, that
you
is
still
very
have
much
to
like
sort
that,
of make it all, it has to be reasonable, right? In that first section, you can't just plug any numbers you want in there.
What is that home show where people like go get a house and they're like, these are my must-haves, beach view.
Oh, yeah.
I want to pay $4,000. Like, that's what that reminds me of, is like, we're not setting realistic expectations for ourselves. And
House Hunters, is that what it is?
Yes. Yeah. So we're inevitably disappointed with ourselves when we don't meet those goals because we haven't like really taken into account what our capacity is.
I think I have one kind of last one. Just curious, when you talk about proposals, how long are your proposals? I know this is something that different agencies and freelancers struggle with. And do you consider the proposal like part of the marketing and sales process still, or you're really kind of getting to a contract at that point? And how do you sort of walk that line?
this is a big question because there's a lot of components. So I'm going to just go with
sorry.
it. That's okay. That's totally okay. So the framework that we follow is on the initial call. We don't really frame it like a sales call. We call it a discovery call because it really is allowing someone to ask us questions, see what they need, see if we're even the right fit for them. Because how many times have we gotten on a call and someone's like, I want to do Squarespace. And you're like, okay, well, I'm not the right person
we don't
for
do
you.
that.
Yeah, right. So on that call, by the end of it, we're asking them, do you want a proposal? So that's like consent step number one, because then we're both on the same page that like now we're going to be moving into like the buying decision process. When we send a proposal, we've done all sorts of different ones. I would say for the first 3 years of business or so, we did very like long, detailed proposals. They converted really well, especially when we were newer in the space. So there did require more, convincing is not the right word. There required more explanation over, what we could do, our mission, our values, our process, all of those things, because we didn't have like a referral coming right from someone that we just worked with that already vouched for how good we were, right? So it was a longer proposal, included a lot of pieces, specifically things like portfolio, really explaining what's included in the package, all of the details. And then a part of that was like, here's the proposal. If you'd like to move forward, I want to empower you with the next step right here. So go ahead and sign the contract and make your first payment. But if you have any questions, we can talk about that now. So it's kind of like an all-in-one thing. I hope that answers that part of the question.
Yeah.
Now, though, we're a little bit more streamlined because the referral network is working so well, right? So it requires less explanation over what we're doing, and it's more just the logistics. Does this price point work for you? And does the timeline work for you? You already know that we're good. We've got like the portfolio to prove it, right? So it's kind of like an evolution. The proposals can be a little bit slimmer, but even so, I love that proposal walkthrough video because it really does answer so many questions, and it again elevates that experience. It's like, she's going to spend all this time creating this proposal, creating the video. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like working with that team.
Yeah. And to touch on the part of the question that was, is the proposal part of the marketing and the sales? The answer is yes. Until you get that invoice and you get them on your calendar, you are still selling, right? And inside of our mentorship, the Making Website Magic School of Business, we like in no uncertain terms discuss proposal in the section where in the pillar of the program where we're talking about sales. And also, like, full stop, your proposal is your secret sales representative, right? It is so much of that is doing the sales for you. This is not only an opportunity for you to personalize it, right? Again, like using language in there where it's like reiterating that you're a person on the other end and you hear and you see this client, you understand what their needs are. If you have a flair for design, this is another opportunity for you to flex that skill in how you present and display your proposal. It's an opportunity for you to add portfolio samples in there that are relevant to them, that are going to, again, guide that buying decision. It's another opportunity for you to outline next steps. Like, now you read this proposal, you want to work with me? Here's what you do next, right? So the length of it also, again, is determined by what you're offering them. On the call that you had with them to even craft the proposal, were you fitting them with one package? And so you just need to detail that one package for them in the proposal? Or do you have 3 options for them? And so you outline, this is why you have these 3 options. It's up to you to get to choose. So there are a lot of things to consider in your proposal and what's included. But ultimately, it is a sales tool for you. And if you're someone who might feel, a little bit not so confident on the calls themselves, this is an opportunity for you to put all your juice, all your magic into the proposal and say, hey, thanks for your time on this call. Would you like a proposal? And then you give them everything you got. And in a way, it's like, by the time they get it, how could they say no? Because it's like chef's kiss.
Yeah, absolutely. When I worked at an agency, our proposals were always like 15, 16, 17 pages long in a PDF. And we found that a lot of people were skipping straight to the one that they cared the most about, which was how much is this going to cost me. And so I love that you talk about the proposal video, because it kind of scraps that from being possible, right? You're going to walk through it and they're going to be able to see everything that's included, because all of that stuff matters in like the why it costs what it costs and why it's going to take the amount of time it takes, is because of all the things you've outlined in the rest of the proposal. Here's what we're going to do for you. Before I wrap up, I know you had one more slide with your information on it. There are a few people asking how they can get a hold of you, or what the name of the podcast was and stuff. So if you still have that up, I'd love for you to go ahead and share that final slide so people can visit your website and get a hold of you in all these different ways. Your podcast is Making Website Magic, right?
It sure is. Yep.
It's like a minute to tell people what your podcast is about.
Yeah.
Besides
so
Making Website Magic.
right. The name is all encompassing. Yes.
Also a description.
It is really a podcast dedicated to the business side of web design and development. So very much we have conversations like we did today, but more so I would say from a mindset side, right, Karyn? We talk strategy, but then we also talk about all those other pieces that are contributing to the way that you're feeling about doing all of the strategy stuff. Because what might prevent you from getting on a discovery call is not so much not having an outline, but it's rather you don't feel confident talking to people, or you don't feel confident in the price that you're offering. So some of our most popular episodes are Stop Offering Everything as a Web Designer and Developer, Reasons You're Undercharging for Your Work. What was the one from yesterday, Karyn? Do you remember?
Oh, who do you need to become to charge 4 figures for a web design project?
Yeah. So really solid topics. And it's Karyn and I, both of us co-host the show, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on that, we truly got started making this podcast because we felt like there was a need, and there was an absence of voices of women of color in the web design space. And so a lot of what we talk about is really coming from this perspective of we have a unique experience in this space, and we want to use our stories, use our voices, use our experiences to just, broaden the brushstroke of what it is like to be a web designer and developer in this business, in this industry. And also hold space for anybody who feels like their voice isn't being heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I am subscribed and love listening to you all talk, and I would encourage everyone else to do the same. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here as we're getting close to the top of the hour. For this, like I said earlier on, we did record this, so this will be available shortly after we get done here. For this one and any other past and future events, make sure that you head to events.godaddy.com or catch any of the past event replays on our GoDaddy Pro YouTube channel. That is it for this one. Thank you again, Sam and Karyn, for joining me. Really enjoyed having you on.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. It truly has been an honor to just spend time with you, and thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all again for joining us, those of you that hung out with us in the chat, and we'll see you at the next meetup. Bye-bye.